Good stuff. All right. Hey, welcome to the Gathering 208 podcast. Glad that you are with us and hanging out. We are live from the Wiley's garage, and thank goodness it is cooler today because last week was
We were
way too
sweating.
hot. We were sweating. I was like red in the face by the time we were done. But
And sweating my beard.
he's sweating his beard, just
It
glistening.
was yeah.
We're glad you're here with us because we have got Scott Wiley, who is a pastor, church planter, counselor, and my dad. And so we're excited to have him with us, and that you are all with us as well. But yeah, welcome to the podcast. How's it? I feel like I should call you Scott to be like somewhat professional, but that's
No,
weird. I'm just going to call you
please, I would
Dad.
be weirded out. I don't think anybody's going to be minding if you just say dad.
Good,
As long
because
as they
that's all
don't
I'm
mind if I
saying.
call you Joshua Huber.
Oh, good. Now that's out there.
No,
Oh man. Oh, so you are, man. You are out in Rapid City, South Dakota.
oh yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, because I grew up in Rapid City for the most part. Like we moved there when I was 6. So tell us a little bit about how you got there and what you do. And I mean, I know there's a lot there, but yeah, you could skip.
Long
You
there.
could
Well,
skip
my
as you
That's a
want.
lot to
grandparents.
unpack when you gave him all those titles.
I know.
What was that, Kellen?
He said, just tell us a little bit of what you do. Like, that's a lot to unpack with all those titles.
Oh boy. Yeah. So yeah, we moved out to Rapid City in 1993. I was a youth pastor. I'd been a youth pastor in Michigan, and before that, a youth pastor in Indiana, where you were born. And then we moved out here in '93 to be an assistant pastor of discipleship and Christian education. And I did that for 9 years at a church. And during that time, I started to, oh boy, this is going to, I'll just tell you the whole thing. All right. So during that time, I was kind of developing my philosophy of discipleship. And, and I came across the idea that, discipleship in our age is got to be more than just being able to teach what the Bible says and how to pray and how to tithe and how to give. It's how to apply these things to a modern day life that is extremely complicated and dysfunctional in a lot of ways. And I remember sitting across the desk from parishioners as an assistant pastor of discipleship with my eyes bugging out wide open, deer in the headlights, with the problems and issues that they were bringing to me. And I thought, I am not prepared to really deal with this. I mean, I'll pray for you, and here's what the Bible says. And that's kind of what they were looking for. And they were encouraged by that and everything. But at that point, I felt God really calling me to learn how to do discipleship in acute situations. And so I started pursuing my degree in counseling. Um, and because I felt like to be able to, everybody comes into church with kind of like a hefty bag over their shoulder with all their garbage, right?
Yeah.
And so many times, I know you guys are trying to plant a church that meets people right where they are. I mean, geographically even. And but so many times in my growing up, church was, you put a nice suit coat over that hefty bag, and then we'll have fellowship. Shake hands in the hallway, and that's our fellowship. And then I thought, man, there's got to be something more than that. It's got to go deeper than that. And I think every pastor has that heart for that. And so I went for the counseling degree. And at the same time, there had been a vision in the church that I was serving as the assistant pastor at, to someday plant a church in a certain part of town, out in Rapid Valley, we call it. And they approached me and your mom and said, um, uh, what do you guys think? Do you want to lead the charge on this? And we prayed against it for a while, and then eventually, the Lord really kind of broke through and said, no, I'm calling you to do this. And so we planted a church, and it's Word of Hope Church, and we're still the church is still kicking. We planted in 2002. We just celebrated our 18th birthday. So now we're officially voting age or whatever. And we're adults, you know, we can be drafted now. And you were a part of that church plant. And I remember giving you a bass for Christmas and said, guess what you're doing, Joshua, with the church plant. And boy, did you ever take off with that. But anyway, so now as a church planter, I was also planting a church, finishing out my degree, got my license as a counselor. I did my internship at a university in the counseling department. And I did that until, and I ran a suicide prevention program that was federally funded. And then the grant ran out, and then they switched me over to multicultural affairs, and they say, here, run this office, you know. And so I ran the multicultural affairs office 3/4 of the time and did counseling 1/4 of the time. And then my full-time job, my other full-time job was the church. And I could only take about 7 years of that. And then I had to quit the paying job and just stay with the church. And so I did that. And then since then, I've kind of hung out my shingle as a counselor, continuing to pastor the church. We built a building, we've added to the building, we're getting ready to add again. And so we continue to develop the ministry. We've started Celebrate Recovery. We've got the Celebrate Recovery, the main one in town. Well, the only one in town, I guess, but one of the hub ones in the Black Hills. We're one of a fellowship of a few. And so we got Celebrate Recovery going. I'm running my practical Christian counseling practice. And now I'm trying to work on a book to deal with. It's kind of like this whole philosophy of discipleship, you know, all the baggage and stuff. It's like taking scripture and applying it to relationships so that we can have healthy relationships. And so I don't know if that's all way more information than you were looking for.
No, that's good.
That's good, man. We and that's one of the reasons I'd love to have you on again sometime to talk about the Celebrate Recovery stuff and addictions and habits, hangups, and hurts, habits, and hangups. But one of the reasons I was excited to have you on this time was, you've been sending out prayer updates, and we had talked about this book that you've been writing and working on about relationships, and I know that I've got these relational gems that you have shared with me pretty much from the time that I kind of got into puberty. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we better start equipping our son for relationships and see how it goes with the first one, and then refine it with each kid. So I was talking to Erica this morning. I was like, yeah, I remember him sharing these things with me when I was like 13. So, that was like a decade or two.
Well,
two decades
even
ago.
When you were 11, there was a big thing back then called the 11-year-old trip through Focus on the Family. James Dobson would talk about it. And you remember going down to Denver to see a Rockies game, and we listened to all of James Dobson's, I can't remember what the names of his cassette tapes were.
Bringing Up Boys, or like, I just remember there was a traffic sign that like said "Changes Ahead" on the cover. Right. I can never remember the name of the curriculum.
It's like preparing your child for puberty, basically, was what it was. But I can't remember. The actual title. Somebody, your mom will remember. She'll post it in the Facebook thing probably.
I remember like listening to these very
preparing for adolescence. That's what it was.
These very descriptive segments about like puberty and what all happens, and then like everything else that
we're
goes
all
with
awkward.
It. And then you pausing the tape and going, "So, do you have any questions?" No, but
yes. No, but I'm traumatized now, Dad. And
relationships though, like they've always been a key part of like our relationship is talking about
Sure.
relationships. Like anytime I've got an issue to navigate with, when I was dating or with other people, or now in ministry, and then now as a lead pastor, each of those phases have kind of brought in these new relational dynamics, and it's like, well, time to call my dad, right? And so when you told me that you were writing this book, and I'm going to try to get it right because I said it wrong last time, but Love Wisely.
Exactly.
That it's such a part of the things that we've talked about. I was excited. You sent me the proposal, and I got to read through some of the summations and the different chapter headings. So I wonder if you would tell us a little bit about why Love Wisely. Like, what does that mean?
Okay. Well, you're talking about relationships and kind of the central role of relationships. And you know what? This is what I say in the book: the stuff of life. Relationships are the stuff of life. And this kind of goes into philosophy of discipleship and everything. But God is a God of relationship. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, eternally existent. The Godhead is already in relationship, in love. There's a love relationship that's already going on. And I've heard authors talk about, there was so much love going on, you couldn't help but create the world, create the universe, create mankind, create us in his image. And with us created in God's image, we're made for relationship. We were made for relationship with God and with each other. And so there's almost a trinity right there. And so that becomes what relationship is all. I mean, that's what life is all about, is the relationship of this to that, and you to me, and me to you, and us to God. And that's what makes life interesting. That's what brings the joy and the color and the flavor into life. That's what brings the trauma and the tragedy and the drama into life as well, because that's what we're wired for. And so in my counseling and in my pastoral ministry, as I've already kind of referred to, like having that deer in the headlights look with people that had actual real problems, I learned that relationships are key, and we're not really well equipped to do them well. Ever since the fall of man, we're not really well equipped to do relationships. In fact, the fall was a relational fall. We fell out of relationship with God and put on shame, and now we're hiding from each other, and we lose intimacy and connection. And so you put people into like intimate relationships, like husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or parent child, and all that sin and shame and all those dysfunctions start to come into play, and we're not equipped to do them well, especially if we didn't have a lot of exposure to biblical truth. But even if we did, depending on how it was lived out and how it was presented, we may not really have a good clue on how to do relationships well. And so I called it Love Wisely. And there's a story about that. One time with Love Incorporated, I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, we have Love Inc. here in Boise.
Okay, you have Love Inc. there. So we have a really strong Love Inc. in Rapid City too. And part of what our Love Inc. tries to do is to train people to work with people who are in poverty. And poverty is defined as having broken relationships and brokenness. And so there was a counselor who came to do a training for volunteers. I did a segment, and he did a segment, and he got up there and said all dysfunctional relationships have this triangle in common. Can I show a picture?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the picture, I I made it a little bit different. I put my own terms in it. Calls it the drama triangle, and a psychologist from the '60s called it he was Cartman. They called it Cartman's triangle. He wrote it in an article, and then it became famous. And he says all dysfunctional relationships have this triangle going on, where somebody plays the role of bully, somebody plays the role of hero, and there's always a victim. And so somebody's playing victim, and the hero is going to try to rescue the victim, and their role in life is to try to rescue victims. The victim's role in life is to try to get heroes to rescue them. And the victim wouldn't be a victim if there wasn't a bully out there somewhere. So the victim is victimized by the bully. The bully looks down on the hero, looks down on the victim, thinks everybody's a jerk, and the hero is just trying to rescue. And so then around and around we go. And then if the hero decides, you know what, the victim's just not getting better, it's not working out very well, and they kind of want to step away, the victim becomes a bully and victimizes the hero, and the hero becomes a victim. And then, or if the hero decides, no, I don't like that, and so he becomes a bully, and the victim becomes a victim again, and then we're looking for a new hero. So if that's sounds complicated, that's pretty much the melodrama of all dysfunctional relationships. There's always this dance going around. Two people can dance around all three parts of the triangle. But at the end of his talk,
awful familiar.
Yeah.
Like, I think I've been in that triangle before. I don't know if you have.
Yeah. Well, haven't we all? And I think, well, here's a little caveat. Pastors are really big on becoming heroes, or heroes are really big on becoming pastors, is the way I should put it. And
it's like a chicken egg question.
Yeah. And so the person's a rescuer. They want to go out and save the world. And so they create drama triangles wherever they go, because they're keeping victims victimized and stuck in their victimness. And so anyway, I got a whole two chapters that describe this and how to stay out of it. But at the end of his talk, the counselor that was explaining this, he said, so that's the drama triangle, and the bottom line is love wisely. And that's all he said. And that just caught my attention. I just thought, oh man, I need to write that down. Love wisely. Oh, that is so good. Yeah. And we're all just going, wow, and he since he died last year or 2 years ago, and so I may include him in the acknowledgments for the dedication of the book, because he was the one that kind of gave me that phrase based on that drama triangle. So then I was thinking about love wisely, and I thought, well, the Bible tells us love your neighbor, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemies, Jesus said. And so yeah, we're all about love. We're supposed to love. And but then you get into the Proverbs and the book of James, and it's telling you, be wise, be wise as serpents, shrewd as snakes. Wise as serpents, innocent as doves, is what Jesus was saying. And so it's like, okay, where do wisdom and love, how do you balance these out? Because if I can see how the hero is always loving his neighbor, the victim, but is it wise? And is it doing a good thing for that victim? Is it helping them? And so the premise of the book is basically this. Love and wisdom, biblical love and biblical wisdom will do the same things. If you love wisely, if you apply biblical wisdom to your intimate relationships, you're going to love in the best way. And if you apply biblical love, it turns out the best way to love somebody is also the wisest way. And so I'm trying to tease that out and put together all these chapters for that concept.
So, and if for those watching, if you've got any comments or questions or thoughts, feel free to post them in the comment section below, and we'll throw those out. And hi to some of you who have been saying hi, so welcome. We're glad you're here, part of the conversation. But when you look at this idea of love wisely and then that drama triangle, does love wisely just help you navigate where you find yourself in the triangle as best as possible, or does it actually break that, or is there something
Yeah.
different?
Yeah, you want to stay out of that triangle because it's a drama triangle. It's in fact, Cartman, who came up with the term drama triangle, or referred to it as a drama triangle, he was thinking in terms of a literal drama, like a play on the stage, you know, and then so here's a stage, and here are the main characters, are these the bully, the hero, the victim. He called them the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim, and so they're playing this role, and each role is dependent on the other to keep the drama going, to keep the play going. And I think of it as like games, keeping the games going. And the dysfunction, it's dysfunctional relationships. He said all dysfunctional relationships have this characteristic, this drama triangle going on. So of course, if we don't want dysfunctional relationships and we want healthy relationships, we want to stay out of the triangle and not play the game, not be in the play. And so in the book, I try to talk about, it's like, okay, what does the Bible say about relationships and how to apply wisdom, and what does it mean to stay out of this triangle? Because the Bible doesn't talk about a drama triangle, but you can see drama triangle characters all throughout the Bible. And so what do you do with that? And as it turns out, I'll just go ahead and give you the key to this part of the book, and then you can just skip over those chapters when you get it. You won't have to read it. Here's the key to staying out of the drama. Are you ready? Here's the key to staying out of the drama triangle. Act like an adult. So there you go. So I talk a lot about spiritual maturity, and the Apostle Paul said, putting away childish things. We grew up into spiritual maturity, and so that means having spiritually mature thinking, not dysfunctional thinking. That means having spiritually mature words and actions, and really the drama triangle. And I guess I'm big on this right now because this is the chapter that I'm really trying to work on. It's chapter 7. And so far, this publisher says it's different chapter. It's like, okay, well. But the thing that drives that triangle, that makes that crazy cycle go, is every one of those characters in the play are trying to extract significance out of somebody else. The victim is trying to extract a sense of significance and importance out of the rescuer, out of the hero. It's like, somebody, please make me feel like I'm important and that I matter. And I've got all these problems, please rescue me. Or I don't have all these problems, but I think I'm a victim, so please rescue me. The bully is trying to extract importance out of the victim, saying, you need to obey me, or you need to submit. You need to, all my problems are your fault, and so I'm going to blame you. And that's a bully, that I'm going to blame you, and that makes me feel more significant, or at least less insignificant. And obviously, the rescuer is finding a huge piece of significance by being a rescuer. And so, obviously, then the key to staying out of the drama triangle is not looking to other people for your sense of significance, or looking to them for your security, for your ability to be lovable and loved. But we find that in Jesus Christ. Only God can really provide that's what the God-shaped hole is that need for security and significance, that need to be loved and to feel like I matter. And so if I'm looking to you to provide that for me, then I'm starting to make a triangle in one way, shape, or form. So
that's powerful.
Like
Just that idea of getting stuck in bad relationships. I mean, it all stems from, emotional immaturity and spiritual immaturity and just this looking to other people to fill a need that other people were never designed to fill.
Right.
Well, I'm even thinking like, back when I was at Ransom and I was handling like benevolent requests, right? And people would come into the church, either because they needed rent assistance or groceries or, what have you. And I'm thinking back to some of the stories and I'm like, oh man, if you're looking at it, you're like, oh, the bully is my landlord and I'm the victim and I need you, the hero, to help me cover my bills or, whatever. And that's just one small, tiny little example, but
a very common one.
Yeah, it's a very common one. Yeah. And I remember one time sitting with Jason Mueller when he was showing me how to handle those conversations, right? And the guy came in and was looking for help. And Jason's like, look, I don't have the money you're looking for, but what I can offer you. And then he went, and he started talking about how, Jesus could rectify the issues that this guy was going through. And, this was before they started, ransom recovery and stuff like that, similar to the Celebrate recovery. And so, yeah, well, as you're talking, Scott, I'm like, it's making so much sense.
I've been there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same experience I had when that other counselor was drawing it on the paper, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's all making sense. And that's kind of the whole philosophy of Love Inc., as I understand it, is we're not trying to just push stuff on people and rescue them out of a certain thing in order to stay a certain position in life, in order to stay stuck in that position. Trying to give them a hand up, and take them through adult education and help them preserve their dignity by working for a piece of furniture or helping out in some way, or taking a class to get some kind of help. And so they get to preserve their own dignity. They're not playing the victim role so much anymore, but they're starting to. And so I think that whole When Helping Hurts and Toxic Charity and those kinds of books, those all play right into this whole love wisely kind of thinking. And and I've I've grabbed onto that as thinking, yes, that is true. That looks like God's way, not to keep people as victims, not keeping them stuck in spite of themselves, keeping them stuck where they are, but to and not by keeping them stuck by just rescuing all the time.
Yeah.
And then that relationship goes sour, and then I become a bully instead. So.
Well, and that's something like Kellen and I have talked about with this. When Helping Hurts is this idea of it was a book that was written. I can't remember the name of the author, but powerful book about how some of the ways that we do even things like short-term missions trips can actually push people into a victim mindset or into and I can't remember the verbiage they use, but essentially we're leaving people in a worse state emotionally and spiritually and sometimes economically than when we showed up. And so it's like a lot of people will, like with benevolence, or a lot of people we interact with, you might, in your workplace, you might have that person that's always kind of wants to be the victim, or that person always wants to be the bully, and you interact with them and they try to push those other relationships on you. But then we can find ourselves doing the same thing when you're trying to be the hero, you're almost pushing people into victimhood sometimes.
So here's
Well,
my
it feels good
advice.
to be the hero, right?
It does feel good to be the
Feels
hero.
great to be the hero.
But you got to have a victim to be the hero.
Yeah. Yep.
So the advice is love wisely. There you go.
Oh, man. That is...
So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Enjoying working on the book and stuff.
I was reading through the chapter titles, or the because you've got parts and then like sub parts or sub chapters in there, and I was like, man, you got like a 5 or 6 week sermon series in here, easy. And like,
well, that's how it started. It started as a 6-week sermon series, and that became the kind of the grist for the book eventually. Yep. So that's what that means.
So when you talk about kind of this relational, spiritual, emotional maturity, like what does that look like? What does it take to get there? What does it look like? Like how can you look at your life and go, okay, I've got some of that?
Well, let me help myself a little bit here.
I'm just going to read sections of the book.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull out the book. Yeah, the way I talk about it is I talk about it in the sense of, the Bible says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I really kind of key in on the self-control. And I use that in another part of the book where I talk about boundaries and having healthy hoops. And then we can talk about that too. But, healthy boundaries on yourself means self-control. And so I'm talking about, well, what is self-control? Self-control is having self-discipline. And so I kind of break it out into disciplined thinking, disciplined speech, and I break that out pretty much, and then disciplined behavior. So disciplined thinking, speech, and behavior, and those all go through together, and those are kind of our communication tools. And how I speak is going to be according to how I think, and so 1 Corinthians 14:20 says, "Brothers and sisters, stop thinking like children. In regard to evil, be infants, but in your thinking, be adults." And so I talk about how disciplined thinking means having mental clarity, not going into like all or nothing thinking, or all these thinking errors that you could have: catastrophizing, mind reading, fortune telling, personalization. There's all these different ways of having undisciplined thinking. Sticking to what's real, using clear, direct, assertive language. And so this is disciplined thinking. And so to stay out of the drama triangle and behave like an adult and have spiritual maturity means I need to not think like a bully, or not think like a rescuer, or not think like a victim. And so for example, bullies almost never think that they're bullies, right? They're thinking, they aren't thinking that they need to dominate another person. All you need to do to think like a bully, all you need to do is be more concerned about being right than being kind. and if it's more important to you to be right than it is to be kind, you're starting to kind of edge into this bully zone. And so changing our thinking to be relationally oriented, it's like, yeah, I want to stand for truth. Because I think truth is truth, and I think it's best for people in the long run anyway. but I also got to realize that when I'm standing for truth, I'm standing for truth in front of a person, and I need to take this person into consideration, and so lead them gently. You know, the Bible talks about being gentle, try to correct people gently, and so in there I say, you know, a good rule of thumb is if you can't let go of an argument, then you're acting more like a bully than an adult. We understand that in the realm of being a victim, that there's a victim mentality. You know, we've heard that phrase before. And that's another example of undisciplined thinking. Victim thinking is kind of focused on how unfair the world is, how unfair everybody is, how come other people get to have better advantages than me, and it's a very personalized, self-defeating kind of mindset, and so disciplined thinking for a victim would mean to refuse to play the victim role and start seeing the world and my part in it more realistically. You know, I can't do everything, but I can do some things. I'm not completely incapable of achieving. The world can be a hard place, but it also can be a wonderful place of blessing. You know, the world isn't always fair, but it's possible to overcome when you trust God and apply yourself diligently. Jesus said, "Take heart, I've overcome the world." So that has to do with disciplined thinking for the victim. You know, if you're a rescuer, you know, in order to have disciplined thinking as a rescuer, or to get out of the rescuer mindset, to think like a rescuer, I just simply need to believe that I really don't have any value unless somebody else thinks I'm a hero. As long as they think I'm a hero, then I'm okay. In fact, most rescuers feel like as long as somebody thinks I am an awesome hero, then I'm barely acceptable. You know, and it's kind of the weird psychology of a lot of pastors, you know, bless their hearts, and I'm one of them. So, uh, let me see. So, disciplined thinking for the rescuer is to use sober judgment when you consider yourself. You're not worthless or unacceptable if you aren't always the hero. Saying no is not a sin against your acceptability. Other people's disappointment is not always your problem. Okay, just because you don't swoop in to make it all better for the victim doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Okay, sometimes there's good reasons not to rescue, and then I kind of go into a whole difference between being a hero and being a good Samaritan. There's a lot of differences there. And so that's disciplined thinking, and then disciplined speech. You know, we talk about that a lot, I think, in church, and that's all really good. And so that's speaking like an adult. You know, adult language is not full of F-bombs and expletives. You know, that's not adult language. Adult language is having language that is seasoned with salt, you know, and that is encouraging and not unwholesome. Unwholesome means like moldy. And it's being truthful and honest. It's having self-control, and same thing with my behaviors and my actions. You know, I want to aim for righteousness and persevere and be filled with Christ and peace-loving and humble. And so these are all aspects of spiritual maturity. Just to give you the long answer.
So what you're kind of saying though is that it's the, you know, the behaviors and the words and the thinking or
thinking,
but they follow the mindset, right? Like you have to have.
Oh yeah.
You have to shape the mindset first, and then everything else follows that.
Exactly. Yep. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. It's kind of the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy. Change how you think, and then you'll change how you feel, and you'll change how you live, and you'll change your habits
Yeah.
and all that.
I remember when I was in high school taking my psychology course classes, and so we're covering the basics, and they were talking about the difference between like cognitive theories and behavioral theories, and it's kind of fun. As when I graduated from high school was the same year that you graduated with your master's and counseling, and so you were telling me, well, one of those is biblical, and one of those is not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do you think?
That's. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can.
Oh, I was just going to go off on a tangent. Larry Crabb, he's a counselor, Christian in Colorado, and has written a lot of books. And he calls it spoiling the Egyptians, because he says, in every theory, well, first of all, you start with all truth is God's truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's true, it's not against God if it's really true, because all
Mm-hmm.
truth is God's truth. And so science is never really going to contradict. Good science will never contradict good theology.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same thing with like in the social or psychological studies, a good psychology theory is not going to contradict the Bible. And so you can look at a psychological theory and you can kind of see where certain things line up. Like, you could take Freud and his whole idea of the id and
Mm-hmm.
take that with the fallenness of man, and our motivations are always, tainted, to say the least. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of Freudian, really, and so maybe Freud was kind of right on some of this stuff. Definitely Aaron Beck with the cognitive behavioral and the as a man thinks in his heart, and change your thinking, change your life, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That all plays into it. Uh, there's another big one that I'm into that comes through in Love Wisely, and I don't really talk about it anywhere, but it's underneath, is what's called attachment theory. And attachment theory is the idea that we all need to attach. We're made for relationship. That's
Yeah.
basically what it is. And so they like to use their own special term, so attachment. And so they talk about like a child, a baby, when it's born, its first task is to securely attach to its mother emotionally. And if that attachment isn't secure, that baby will have problems, developmental problems all the way through, maybe even into adulthood. And so you can have insecure attachment, and there's like RAD,
Mm-hmm.
which I can't remember what it stands for.
I think that's reactive attachment disorder.
Yes,
A friend of ours, Kellen. A friend of ours has a child that, deals with that.
Yeah. And so, and it may not, it can happen for any number of reasons, circumstances or biochemical reasons or whatever. But if there's not a good, strong, and secure attachment to your initial object, which is mommy, then it can create problems. And so to me, that is a very biblical theory, because it's like, it's all about relationship. There we are again, all about relationship. And that guy wasn't even a Christian. Bowlby was his name. But I tell you what, all my counseling for couples is basically rooted in that theory, trying to not just solve their money problems. How are you going to talk about money? Communication problems, in-laws, sex. It's like, how are we going to work through all these things? And it's like, okay, I don't know how you're going to work through all these things, but if we can get you to securely attach down here in the guts and the emotional level, you'll be able to work all that stuff out. If you guys can be reminded you love each other and you're compassionate toward one another. I think that's why the Bible talks about so much about those deeper things like kindness and grace and love and devotion and loyalty. All those things that are down here in the basement, in the foundation, And then you can figure out all the other things that you differ on, and some of those things you may never resolve, but as long as you're securely attached, um, you'll have a good relationship and one that
Yeah.
goes the distance.
I remember when after Eric and I got married, one of the first things you had told us, and you and Mom, I think, were together and kind of pulled me aside and said, you and Erica are always going to be welcome here at the house, and this can always be a second home or a place to stay, or if you ever find yourself in a situation where you just need a place, you and your family will always be welcome here. But you had better not show up here without her because you're running. And if you guys are fighting, you will never get to stay the night here. You will always have to go home and deal with it.
Go home and deal with it.
And
wow, I don't remember saying that. Well, bless our hearts. That must have been your mom.
It might have been. It might have been. But it just reminds me of that attachment. You and Mom were. I mean, you were sad to see Eric and I move to Indiana pretty quick after we got married, but at the same time, in some of the conversations, there was just such an importance for us to have that time where we couldn't run home. And long distance calls still cost money at that point. So, you didn't call home either. You had to wait till after 9 PM to call home, and,
quite honestly, I think, that's a big reason why your mom and I maybe survived our first few years, because we got married and then I went to college. And so we had to move away from parents and stuff. And long distance phone calls did cost money, and so did gas, and even though it was a lot cheaper, and time and time away from work and all that kind of stuff. And so we couldn't just go home. We couldn't just storm out and say, I'm going to go back to Dad or Mom. And so then we had to figure it out. We had to kind of work through it. And it's like, okay, if we're going to make this thing work, we're going to have to apply a lot of grace and forgiveness. We're going to have to try to understand each other and try to be a little softer with each other and stay connected. And if we were able to just have an escape hatch to run off to, we might not have made it, because those first few years of marriage and poverty in school were pretty severe,
Yeah, Mom is setting the record straight in the comments that it was her that told me this.
Oh, yes. It kind of sounded like something she would say.
Yeah, it does. I was driving through coffee drive-through here in town today, and they had all these supportive signs up, right? And just you've got this, and just kind of encouragements as people are going through and getting their coffee with everything going on. And we're still in social distancing until the end of the month, minimum. And there was one sign that said essentially that the purpose of life is happiness, right? If you've got happiness, then everything else will fall in place. And yet, like what you're saying now is the richness and the tight attachment actually comes from going through those difficulties with someone and sticking it through. Like if I just pursue happiness, I would have gone home, right? Because it's a lot more comfortable, and I can feel happy, sitting in my parents' basement, and which I mean, not after you took my room away. You took my room away and put me in that little temporary closet. They seriously put a temporary wall up in this little strip in the back of the basement and said, by the way, that's your new room. Nice. After I went to college. That's a whole other story. Slowly getting me out of the house.
Yeah. But, and then we got a dog to replace you.
Oh,
you definitely left a void.
I mean, it looked like you had something about that, the happiness and the.
I mean, isn't Ecclesiastes like about chasing what feels good and makes me feel good and makes me happy, and I mean, I think we see that that's not the purpose of life, as you were talking, I was just thinking back to like times where my wife and I, like, you go through your difficulties. Every marriage goes through it, right? And I'm sure there's moments where she was like, I'd be a lot happier if I wasn't here right now, but yeah, sticking it out. I mean, are things always perfect and smooth for me and my wife? No, but we work through those difficulties. We, they've become, some of them have even become part of our story, and with that, God's redemption within our marriage, right?
Yeah,
so, I've done a lot of stupid things. It's a good thing my wife is a grace-filled woman, because, there's, in hindsight, there's times where I'm like, what? Why did you stick this out? But it's because of what you were saying earlier, Scott, right? My wife is a mature Christian woman, not perfect by any means, but neither am I. And, but she's a mature Christian woman, and she extended grace to me. She could have played the drama triangle out, she could have played the victim, and so on. But, she was a grace-filled woman, and I know that wasn't always easy for her. But yeah, so that's what I was, as you were sharing, Josh, that was just some of the thoughts going through my head, but yeah.
Yeah, I think when people talk about, well, whatever makes you happy, and happiness is the point, and that kind of thing. The definition of happiness is so short-sighted, because what's going to make you happy in the moment could actually make you miserable in the long run, because, and so I think the Bible gets it right when it points us more toward holiness than happiness. It's like, do right, love mercy, do justly, and everything in that verse, and pursue righteousness, and honor one another, honor God, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Do what is good, and guess what? A byproduct is going to be more happy moments because of the internal world being put together in the right place. Whereas if I'm just pursuing happiness, then really I'm kind of pursuing the flesh, is kind of what that means. And then guess what? I'm going to have a lot more unhappy moments, and they're going to be deep, and they're going to be terrible. They're going to be filled with shame and guilt, and broken relationships in my wake. And so it's pretty short-sighted when we talk about happiness. Don't worry, be happy.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I talk a lot about, the idea of wholeness versus happiness.
Yes.
And one of those things is worth pursuing. And, I think
I always define wholeness in terms of holiness.
Yes. Because we like to alliterate. Well, that's not really alliteration. That's that's rhyming. Whatever, Kellen.
We like homonyms, or
there you go. Yeah, I feel like sometimes you can get pigeonholed into those cultural conversations of happiness, and if you're depriving somebody of their happiness or their desires in a moment. And when we're walking alongside people in life, and we're trying to, a lot of times you meet somebody and they just can't seem to look past their nose and what they're in. That current situation is just, it's all consuming. And I've been there. I call you when I'm there. Help me see further ahead. But a lot of times it's just like, man, when you want to walk with people and help them see further ahead, you almost have to you just have to change what they're pursuing. Otherwise they just end up right back into these unhealthy roles, and just been bitter at you for trying to guide them and direct them. But
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. And I was thinking, in this proposal for if anybody out there is watching this and you have something to do with Wesleyan Publishing House or any other publisher, um, hey, we're writing a book. And it could turn into multiple books because in the proposal, they said, well, a lot of publishers are looking for authors. They're not looking for like a single book. Do you have any other ideas on books? And I thought, yeah, I've got an idea on a book, other books. I think my son and I would be able to write a book on loving wisely in leadership, like church leadership. And did I even print that part out? No. But or yeah, church. The highs and lows, or the agony of victory, and the agony of victory. The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat from two church planters.
I remember you bringing that up in passing, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe a little longer.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be fun. And then you sent me your publisher proposal, and all of a sudden I'm listed as co-author on subsequent books.
Yes, a new book idea that we would co-author. Yeah,
it could be
not yet, but it could be. But yeah, I think everything that you were just describing a minute ago plays into that whole thing of when you are trying to help people and walk with them. Sometimes you have to apply what James Dobson used to call tough love. You have to kind of confront or challenge something that they're thinking, and not everybody's ready for that. Not everybody takes to that very well. And maybe sometime later they come back and say, "Oh, you're right," and that's very rewarding. Feels very good. But sometimes they just don't, and then you have to know in your heart, it's like, okay, I tried to be faithful. Try to be faithful to the word and to them, to this person, even though it didn't turn out that we stayed in relationship or something. So that's another book.
Is that 2 minutes? Oh, my wife has given me the 2 minutes.
Oh my!
I do have a question about. You talked about, so when people are healthy, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, they're not in the triangle, right? Even if other people around them are trying to push them into the triangle, we don't have to be in that.
Right. You don't have to
when we
roles.
Get unhealthy, do you think that people naturally tend towards one side of that triangle, or maybe within racial relationships, or what does that look like?
Yeah, most people, depending on their temperament and upbringing, nature, nurture, will enter a triangle at some point, and so they might have kind of a timid nature, and or be down and under, or raised under a bully or something, and so they see themselves as a victim all the time, and so they're always looking for the hero. And what can also happen is they make a big change, a big reformation, but instead of getting out of the triangle, they just change positions. It's like, I found a new purpose, rescuing.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a hero. But we all have a tendency to be one thing. Like I said before, a lot of rescuers feel called into the ministry. And it's not that they're not called into the ministry, but they probably need to do something about this rescuing tendency and turn it into being just a good Samaritan. and loving their neighbor in an appropriate way that's not detrimental to the victim. Some people will tend to be bullies, and they'll come into it looking for people to blame, people to hold down, people to dominate in order to feel okay about themselves. So,
Yeah, we
yes,
see that a lot
absolutely.
in like recovery ministries or counseling or just pastoral ministry. Of you walk with somebody and they, like you said, they go through that big change and they feel like they've taken this big step and they've grown so much, but all they did was change roles. They didn't actually
Hmm.
find any healing or wholeness. It's just their perspective's different. It's like
Yeah,
you're still staring at the same pile of junk in your life. You're just
yeah,
standing on the other side of the other side of the hill.
yeah, and just remember, it all goes back to, where am I getting my significance? Where am I getting my
Mm,
sense of who I am as a person? And I can come into recovery thinking I'm going to no longer be a victim by being a rescuer. And I'm
mm,
not going to get my significance from people rescuing me. I'm going to get my significance from rescuing people. And it's like, whoops, I'm still in the triangle. I'm still caught up. And so a lot of recovery work, like step studies, is unpacking all that stuff and picking it apart and finding my significance in Christ alone. And
mm.
it's really tricky, actually, because you can tell yourself, my significance is in Jesus. And then somebody looks at you cross-eyed and you go,
Do you think people can, if someone has self awareness and they kind of know where they tend, either in general or within specific relationships, is that something people can use as almost a barometer for where they're at in their spiritual maturity, emotional health? Where, say like you, I'm going to use Eric and I as an example. Say like when I am getting emotionally unhealthy or spiritually unhealthy, I become more of a bully towards Erica. Um,
yeah, with
if I start to
self-awareness,
notice that in
you're
my
halfway
life,
there.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking all of a sudden that can all of a sudden become a barometer. If you can step back from your behavior for a moment and go, oh, that wasn't okay. So that's actually, it's not stemming from something she did. It's stemming from, I've got an issue over here. I've got an issue with
Yeah,
not being fully reliant on God right now.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think that's really good. And you can use things like, what does spiritual maturity look like, or what's a drama triangle look like, and
Mm.
kind of say, oh, am I starting to play those roles now? But it definitely takes self-awareness, and that's probably maybe something I ought to stick in the book, because I don't think people who are in the triangle are very self-aware. That's why I'm writing the chapter in there. It's trying to create some, that makes sense, kind of that
Hmm.
thing, and create that self-awareness. Because boy, if you can have that, you're 80% of the way there.
Mm. Well, we are, I mean, we're at an hour. So I don't know. What's that?
Do we have any questions or anything on that?
No, if, so,
How long is the show?
well, it usually goes
Usually
for
an
an
hour.
hour, but I didn't tell you that. So if anyone has any questions, um, we're sitting comfortably on a couch, so we're good to go. No, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Scott here. That felt weird. Ask my
Call him
dad.
Scott.
Feel free to post it, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A here. And do you have any questions, Kellen? While we see if anybody wants to post anything, or
I mean, not really a question, more an observation. You had mentioned it right at the beginning of the call, or beginning of the. Do you call it a show?
call a work show,
Call,
podcast,
whatever. Yeah,
whatever this is.
that I think a lot of people, when they hear the word poverty, they think of somebody who's just poor, right? Somebody who's financially
Yeah.
in a hard spot, and I just think that's a great observation, that poverty really stems from broken relationships somewhere in their life, You know, and it may be that, you know, their parents loved them, but it came from, you know, something before them. Maybe it was their grandpa, grandma, whatever, or aunts, uncles, whatever it could be that led to the broken relationships in their life. But yeah, poverty is just so much more than somebody who doesn't have money, you know? And so I just thought that was a great observation right at the beginning, and glad you touched on that.
That guy's name was Fickert. That wrote When Helping Hurts. That's kind of drew that from him.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great book. I suggest people pick up a copy. It's not a long read either.
And it's an easy read.
Yeah.
It's not overly hard.
And they got a video series and stuff.
Oh, really? I haven't watched those.
Yeah, to teach a group, you know. Brian Fickert.
Fickert.
Yeah, that's his name.
Oh, man. Yeah,
Right.
I tend to think of things in, you know, you have those four key relationships were broken at the fall, you know, between us and God, us and others, us and creation, and then us and ourselves, right? The internal relationship. And it seems like a lot of that poverty and a lot of that that search for meaning seems to it always stems from one of those four things being broken.
Well, in that case, and this is exactly Brian Fickert's point, is we're all impoverished. You know, we all have poverty. Some of us don't have material poverty like others do, but we have the same roots. You know, it's just like in recovery, there's different hurts or different habits, different hang-ups, but they all come from the same hurts in a way, or the same internal brokenness, and we've just learned to cope with them with this or that behavior that is unhealthy or sinful. And so yeah, we all have brokenness, and we all have poverty and need, and so that is a first step to really loving wisely and to ministering to people in material poverty, is to not take some kind of a I've got it together and you don't type of stance, because then you're just increasing their poverty by robbing them of dignity and creating more brokenness in their broken relationship with themselves and with God.
Wow.
And with you. So I know I'm very heady and theoretical.
It's good stuff.
Your mom, when we teach parenting, I always have her in there because she's better with like stories and examples and things like that. And so I tell the group, it's like, okay, I'm here to give you the play-by-play, and she gives you the color. And and that's,
I love
that's
it.
how we divide it up.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on again to talk about emotional and relational health is always going to be an issue, but you know, parenting. I know you actually teach parenting courses that are required by the state for people going through. I think are you still doing those, or you did at one point? Still doing that?
Yeah, I mean, not currently because of our wonderful pandemic, but I will again in the fall. It's Common Sense Parenting from Boys Town, and it's our court system. It's one of two courses that they will require parents to take for custody issues, and it's really good stuff. I really enjoy teaching it.
I remember when we had Liam, our oldest, we were walking through some of those tools that they because you've been teaching that for a while, but and so we'll have to have you on again, talk about parenting and talk about you know, recovery ministries and all kinds of stuff there, but Really appreciate you being on. We had Debbie's post said, in recovery, I think we need to remember we can hate the sin but love the person, and some kind of separate the two. And so I think walking that can be. I mean, do you have anything you want to say on that?
No, I think she's absolutely right. It's like, because I think that's the position Jesus takes, is that he loves people so much, he just cares about them, and it breaks his heart to see his dearly loved people get caught up in sins that are destroying them and driving them further from their salvation from God. And so we can see people with those same eyes of compassion to separate them. And I think that's a key to ministry, by the way, is to separate people from what they do. The valuable person for whom Christ died, whose identity ultimately is going to be wrapped up in Jesus, from the sins that they're committing or the things that they're doing or the addictions that they're getting caught up in, even like some of the decisions that they're making that are frustrating the bejesus out of us, and they're making these decisions, but we got to separate the person, the valuable person for whom Christ died, from this behavior. And it's hard. It's really hard because people will own that behavior, like, that is me, that is who I am, and you better buy into it. They could be that way, or they could be like, stop judging me.
And that is so hard in an era that really values some of that tribal thinking and some of the and I don't have an issue with people identifying and going, those are my people, that's my crowd, that's my tribe, but the identity going that you've wrapped these outward pieces of your life into just the inward validity of who you are. And so often it's hard to even start a conversation if people know that you disagree with them. I think that's one of the reasons, like our church plant here, one of our core pieces is love local. And the idea is to let people know that we love them on the front end, right? Regardless of whether we agree or disagree on anything, we believe that you have inherent value as a person. And so we're going to show you love and support and community and positive relationship as much as we can from the get-go, because you having value is more important than the areas that we might disagree with. And when the relationship gets to the point where we can talk about those things, and then we can talk about those things. But
yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And if you want a nice little distillation, John Maxwell always talked about the 101% principle. Find the 1% that you agree on and give it 100% of your effort.
Yes.
So, a little rule of thumb there.
Oh, it looks like Connor has got a knack. He knows, hey, Connor, come here. He knows exactly when it has been an hour.
It's like an internal clock.
It's like an internal clock. Come say hi to Grandpa.
Hey, buddy. I see him every day now because he joins us on Zoom, kids. Hi, Zoom kid.
So you guys probably can't see. I don't know if you can see him, but he's right over here. But
yep, I can see him.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. Kathy says, really enjoyed you discuss being more concerned with being kind than being right.
Yep.
Love wisely, really good stuff. So thanks, really Kathy. Appreciate you coming on and sharing about your book and some of the process of getting that written. And if anyone knows or has any ins with the publishing crowd, you can hit us up. But where can people find you?
You can look me up on my websites. For my counseling, it's practicalcc.com for practical Christian counseling. Mm-hmm. The church is wordofhope.info, but that's mostly just about the church. I also have a podcast called Love Wisely. You can find that on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on wherever podcasts are found, I guess, Spotify, etc. Got Facebook page for Practical Christian Counseling. Hey, buddy. This is my other buddy. Hey, Mini
Liam's here if
Josh.
you guys can't see him.
Liam. Yeah, we could see. And so there you go, practicalcc.com and Love Wisely podcast.
Awesome.
Are the big ones. I've got a YouTube channel out there too, but I don't have much on it, so don't worry about it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll have to have you on again. And for those of you
Thanks for
watching,
having me.
yeah, absolutely. For those watching, we are going to have Lonnie Nelson on next week. He is our worship director here at Gathering 208, and we're going to talk to him about his walk and his call and how he's ended up in the world of worship ministry, and ended up with a church plant of people he didn't know. And so we're excited to have him on. And so be there for that next Wednesday at 7 p.m. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, guys. God bless you.
Oh, thanks. Did you